The clock on the wall showed 9:45 p.m. when Claire finished wiping down the last table. Her feet were killing her. She'd been on them since noon, running back and forth between the kitchen and the dining area of Romano's bistro. It was her second shift of the day, and all she wanted was to go home, soak her feet, and maybe catch an hour of her favorite show before passing out. But that wasn't going to happen. Not yet, anyway. Claire grabbed the broom from the storage closet and started sweeping near the entrance. The bistro was almost empty now, just two couples finishing their desserts, speaking in low voices. The kitchen staff was already cleaning up, and she could hear the clanking of pots and pans from the back. As she swept, her eyes drifted to the corner of the room where a beautiful grand piano sat. It was new. Mr. Romano, the owner, had bought it 3 weeks ago at an auction. He thought it made the place look fancy, more upscale. The piano was gorgeous, all polished black wood that reflected the dim lighting of the restaurant. But to Claire, it was torture. Every single day she had to walk past that piano. Every single day it reminded her of everything she'd lost. 3 years ago, Claire had been living a completely different life. She'd been a music student at one of the best schools in the country. Piano was her whole world. She'd practiced 8 hours a day, sometimes more. Her professors said she had real talent, the kind that only comes along once in a while. She'd dreamed of concert halls, of recordings, of traveling the world and sharing her music. Then her mom got sick. The cancer came out of nowhere. One day her mom was fine, and the next they were sitting in a doctor's office hearing words like stage 3 and aggressive treatment. Claire did what any daughter would do. She dropped everything and came home to take care of her. The medical bills piled up fast. Insurance covered some of it, but not nearly enough. Claire got a job waitressing to help pay for treatments, medications, hospital stays. She told herself it was temporary. She'd go back to school once her mom got better. But her mom didn't get better. After she passed away a year ago, Claire thought about going back to music. She really did. But the debt was still there, sitting on her shoulders like a weight she couldn't shake off. Every month she sent money to pay down those hospital bills. Every month, there was less and less left over. Going back to school felt like a dream that belonged to someone else now, so she kept waitressing. She worked double shifts 6 days a week at Romano's. She was good at it, too. The customers liked her. She remembered their orders, smiled even when she was exhausted, and never complained. Mr. Romano told her all the time that she was his best employee, but it wasn't what she'd imagined for herself. Claire pushed the broom across the floor, lost in thought. She didn't even notice the man walk through the door until she heard his voice. "Excuse me, I'd like a table." She looked up, startled. The man standing in the doorway was probably in his mid-40s, wearing an expensive suit that probably cost more than she made in 3 months. His watch caught the light, all silver and gleaming. Everything about him screamed money. Claire glanced at the clock again. 9:47 p.m., they closed at 10. "I'm sorry, sir, but we're about to close," she said politely, giving him her best customer service smile. "The kitchen is cleaning up for the night." The man didn't smile back. He walked right past her and sat down at a table near the window, acting like he hadn't heard a word she'd said. "I'd like to see a menu," he said, not even looking at her. Claire stood there for a moment, unsure what to do. The last two couples were leaving now, pulling on their coats and heading for the door. One of them gave her a sympathetic look as they passed. She took a deep breath and walked over to the man's table, still holding on to her smile. "Sir, I really am sorry, but our kitchen closes at 10. That's in about 10 minutes. I'm not sure we can—" "Then I suggest you hurry," he interrupted, finally looking at her. His eyes were cold. "I've had a very long day and I'm hungry. Surely you can manage something simple." Claire felt her smile falter, but she caught it. She'd dealt with difficult customers before. This was nothing new, of course. "Let me get you a menu." She hurried to the hostess stand and grabbed a menu, then brought it back to his table. The man barely glanced at it before rattling off his order. "Steak medium rare. Roasted vegetables. A bottle of red wine, and make sure it's properly chilled." Though how you chill red wine, Claire wasn't sure. She wrote everything down and rushed to the kitchen. Tony, the head chef, was not happy. "You're kidding me," he said, looking at the order. "We're literally cleaning the grill right now." I know. "I'm sorry." He just walked in and he wouldn't leave. Tony muttered something in Italian that Claire was pretty sure wasn't a compliment, but he started preparing the food anyway. She'd make it up to him somehow. Maybe she'd bring him coffee for a week. While the food cooked, Claire went back to check on the man. He was on his phone, typing rapidly, his face set in a permanent scowl. She refilled his water glass, which he hadn't touched, and he didn't acknowledge her at all. The other staff members were leaving now. The busboy gave her a wave. One of the other waitresses mouthed "good luck" before heading out the back door. Soon it was just Claire, Tony in the kitchen, and this unpleasant man who couldn't be bothered to come to dinner at a reasonable hour. When the food was ready, she brought it out on her best serving tray. She placed it in front of him carefully, making sure everything looked perfect. "Here you are, sir. Is there anything else I can get for you?" He cut into the steak without answering. Then he tasted it. His face twisted into an expression of disgust. "This is overcooked." Claire looked at the steak. It looked perfectly medium rare to her, pink in the middle just like he'd asked. "I'm sorry you feel that way, sir. Would you like me to— The wine is too warm. I can bring you some ice and it's too bright in here. Can't you dim these lights?" Claire felt her jaw tighten, but she kept her voice pleasant. "I'll see what I can do." She went to the light switches and lowered them slightly. She brought him a wine cooler with ice. She asked Tony to make another steak, earning herself another string of Italian words she was glad she didn't understand. For the next 20 minutes, the man found something wrong with everything. The vegetables were too salty. Then they weren't salty enough. The bread was cold. The butter was too hard. The table wobbled, though it had been fine for the 5 years she'd worked there. Claire handled each complaint with patience she didn't feel. Her feet hurt. She was tired. She wanted to go home. But she needed this job, and Mr. Romano had made it clear that keeping customers happy was the top priority, even difficult ones. Then the man's eyes landed on the piano in the corner and something changed in his expression. He smiled for the first time since walking in, but it wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who'd just thought of something amusing, at least to them. He waved Claire over with a snap of his fingers. "That piano," he said, pointing. "Does anyone play it?" Claire's stomach dropped. She had a bad feeling about where this was going. "It's mostly decorative," she said carefully. "That's a shame." He leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Mr. Romano mentioned to me once at a business dinner that one of his waitresses used to be quite the pianist." "That wouldn't be you, would it?" Claire's mouth went dry. She wanted to lie, but something in his expression told her he already knew the answer. Claire felt her heart sink as the man stared at her, waiting for an answer. She could feel heat rising in her cheeks. How did he know about her past? And why did Mr. Romano tell people about it? Her old life felt like a private thing, something she'd locked away in a box she didn't want to open. "I used to study music," she finally said, her voice quiet. "But that was a long time ago." The man's smile widened, and Claire liked it even less than his scowl. "Perfect," he said, like she'd just told him the best news he'd heard all day. "I want you to play something for me while I finish my dinner." Claire blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "The piano, play it. I've just come from a charity event where the entertainment was absolutely dreadful. Some amateur who claimed to be a concert pianist but couldn't keep tempo to save his life. I could use some real music to salvage this evening." "Sir, I don't think that's—" "I'll make it worth your while," he interrupted, reaching for his wallet. He pulled out a crisp $100 bill and placed it on the table between them. "One song. Surely that's not too much to ask." Claire stared at the money. $100. That would cover groceries for 2 weeks or a chunk of her electric bill. She worked an entire 8-hour shift to make that much, and here it was, just sitting on the table. But her hands started shaking just thinking about touching those piano keys. "I haven't played in 3 years, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'm really not—" "Oh, come now. It's like riding a bicycle, isn't it? You never really forget." He picked up his wine glass and took a sip, looking at her over the rim. "Besides, what else are you doing right now?" "The restaurant is empty." "Indulge me." Claire glanced toward the kitchen. She could see Tony through the window finishing up the cleaning. He'd be leaving soon and she'd be alone with this man. Something about the whole situation felt wrong, but she couldn't quite put her finger on why. "I'm not comfortable with that," she said firmly, "but I appreciate the offer." She started to turn away, but his voice stopped her. "That's disappointing." His tone had changed, gone sharp and cold. You know, I'm good friends with Mr. Romano. We do business together. I'd hate to have to tell him about the poor service I received tonight. About how his staff refused a simple, reasonable request from a paying customer. Claire turned back slowly. The man was looking at his phone now, typing something, but his words hung in the air like a threat. "That's not fair," she said quietly. "Fair?" He looked up at her, his eyebrows raised. "I'm offering you $100 to do something you supposedly trained for years to do. I'd say that's more than fair. But if you'd prefer I discuss your attitude with your employer, that's your choice." Claire's mind raced. She needed this job. She needed every shift, every tip, every hour she could get. The debt wasn't going away. She couldn't afford to lose this job because of one difficult customer, no matter how unreasonable he was being. "One song," she heard herself say. The words felt like they were coming from somewhere else, not from her own mouth. "Excellent." He settled back in his chair, looking pleased with himself. "Take your time. I'm in no rush now." Claire walked toward the piano like she was walking toward the edge of a cliff. Each step felt heavy. When she reached it, she stood there for a moment, just staring at the keys. They were white and black and perfect, not a single scratch on them. This piano had probably never been played, not really. It was just decoration, like Mr. Romano wanted. A pretty thing to look at. She pulled out the bench and sat down. The seat was exactly the right height. Her feet found the pedals automatically. Muscle memory from thousands of hours of practice. She placed her hands on the keys but didn't press down yet. Behind her, she heard Tony call out a goodbye and the back door closing. She was alone now with this man and his $100 bill and his threats. "Anytime you're ready," he called out, amusement in his voice. Claire closed her eyes. She tried to think of what to play. Something simple, she thought. Something she could get through without falling apart. She thought about all the pieces she used to know. All the music that had once been as natural to her as breathing. But when her fingers finally pressed down on the keys, she wasn't thinking about simplicity anymore. She started playing Chopin, one of the nocturnes. It was a piece her mother had loved, one she used to play for her during those long months of treatment. The first few notes came out shaky. Her fingers felt stiff, uncertain. She hit a wrong note and winced. This was a mistake. She should stop. She should just give him his money back and... Then something shifted. Her hands remembered what her mind had tried to forget. The muscle memory was still there, buried but not gone. The notes started flowing more smoothly. Her fingers found their old confidence, moving across the keys with the precision that had once made her professors call her gifted. And with the music came everything else. All the feelings she'd been pushing down for 3 years. The grief over her mother, the loss of her dreams, the exhaustion of working herself to the bone just to pay off bills for a life that was already over. The loneliness of being 28 years old and feeling like life had already passed her by. It all poured into the music. Claire didn't realize she was crying until she felt the tears dripping off her chin. But she didn't stop playing. She couldn't have stopped if she wanted to. The music had taken over now, pulling everything out of her that she'd been trying so hard to keep locked inside. She transitioned into another piece, something darker and more complex. Rachmaninoff. Her hands flew across the keys, hitting chords that made the whole piano vibrate. The sound filled the empty restaurant, bouncing off the walls, transforming the space into something else entirely. She forgot about the man at the table. Forgot about the $100. Forgot about being tired and scared and trapped. For these few minutes, she was just a pianist again, just someone making music. And it felt like coming up for air after being underwater for too long. When she played the final note, the sound hung in the air for a long moment before fading away. Claire sat there with her hands still on the keys, her chest heaving like she'd just run a marathon. She could feel her heart pounding against her ribs. Then she heard the sound of applause. She turned around, confused. The man at the table wasn't clapping. He was sitting there completely still, staring at her with an expression she couldn't read. His face had gone pale and his mouth was slightly open. The applause was coming from the doorway to the kitchen. Tony was standing there, his cleaning rag still in his hand, clapping slowly. Behind him she could see Luis, the dishwasher, who she thought had left. He was clapping too, shaking his head in amazement. "Claire?" Tony said softly. "I had no idea." She wiped her eyes quickly, embarrassed. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Don't apologize." Tony walked toward her, still shaking his head. That was incredible. Claire looked back at the man at the table. He still hadn't moved. He was just staring at her with this strange expression on his face, like he'd seen something that had completely shocked him. Finally, he stood up. He walked toward the piano slowly, and Claire instinctively leaned back. But when he spoke, his voice was different, quieter. All the arrogance had drained out of it. "Where did you study?" he asked. "Does it matter?" Claire's voice came out sharper than she intended. "It matters." He pulled out his phone again, but this time his hands were shaking slightly. "That wasn't just good. That was extraordinary. I need to make a phone call. Sir, it's after 10. I really need to, please." He held up a hand. "Just give me 2 minutes. I promise you'll want to hear this." He pressed a button on his phone and held it to his ear. Claire exchanged confused glances with Tony, who just shrugged. "Aunt Helen?" the man said into the phone. "I know it's late. But remember what you were telling me at the gala tonight? About not being able to find the right pianist? I think I just found her." Claire sat frozen on the piano bench as the man paced near the window, his phone pressed to his ear. She could hear a woman's voice on the other end, tinny and distant, though she couldn't make out the words. "I'm serious," the man said, his tone urgent in a way it hadn't been all evening. "I just heard her play. Helen, you know I don't exaggerate about music. This is what you've been looking for." Tony walked over to Claire and leaned down, speaking quietly. "You okay? You want me to stay?" She nodded, grateful. "Yeah, please," the man was still talking. "No, not at the gala. I'm at Romano's Bistro. Long story. But Helen, I'm telling you, she's got everything. Technique, emotion, the kind of depth you can't teach. She made me forget about that disaster of a performance earlier." He paused, listening. Claire watched him, her mind spinning. Who was he talking to? Who was Helen? And why was he acting like hearing her play had changed something? "She studied at Berkeley," the man said into the phone. "Juilliard," Claire corrected automatically, then immediately regretted speaking. The man's head snapped toward her. "Sorry, Juilliard. Even better." He listened for another moment, then held out the phone toward Claire. "She wants to talk to you." Claire stared at the phone like it might bite her. "I don't understand what's happening. Just talk to her, please. Her name is Helen Reeves." The name meant nothing to Claire. She looked at Tony, who shrugged, just as confused as she was. Slowly, she took the phone from the man's outstretched hand and held it to her ear. "Hello? Hello, dear." The woman's voice was warm but professional, with the slightest hint of a European accent. "My nephew tells me you just gave quite a performance." "Your nephew?" "Yes, the insufferable man who apparently bullied you into playing." "I apologize for that. Daniel can be rather tactless when he wants something." Daniel. So that was his name. Claire looked at him, and he had the decency to look slightly ashamed. "I don't understand why I'm on the phone," Claire said honestly. "I'm the artistic director of the Metropolitan Symphony Orchestra," Helen said. "Perhaps you've heard of us?" Claire's breath caught. Of course she'd heard of them. Every serious musician had. They were one of the most prestigious orchestras in the country, touring internationally, performing at venues that most musicians only dreamed about. "Yes," she managed to say. "Wonderful. Then you might understand my current predicament. We have a European tour scheduled to begin in 6 weeks, and our pianist had to withdraw due to a family emergency. I've been auditioning replacements for the past 2 months, and everyone has been technically proficient, but emotionally hollow. Do you know what I mean by that?" "I think so," Claire said softly. She'd heard plenty of pianists like that during her time at Juilliard. People who could hit every note perfectly, but somehow never made you feel anything. "My nephew has very particular taste in music. He's been a classical piano enthusiast since he was a child. If he says you have something special, I believe him. So I'd like to offer you an audition. Tomorrow morning if you're available. 10 o'clock at Symphony Hall." Claire almost dropped the phone. "Tomorrow? I know it's short notice, but we're running out of time, and if Daniel is right about you, I can't afford to wait. What do you say?" "I haven't performed in 3 years," Claire blurted out. "I haven't even practiced. I don't have any prepared pieces." You just played Chopin and Rachmaninoff from memory after 3 years away from the piano," Helen interrupted gently. "That tells me everything I need to know about your preparation. The question is, do you want this opportunity or not?" Did she want it? Claire felt like she couldn't breathe. This was the kind of chance that didn't come along. the kind of thing she'd stopped letting herself even dream about because it hurt too much to want something that seemed impossible. "I have to work tomorrow," she said, and immediately felt stupid. Here was Helen Reeves, offering her an audition with one of the best orchestras in the world. And she was worried about her waitressing shift. "I'm sure Mr. Romano would understand if you called in for one morning," Helen said kindly. "This is rather important, don't you think?" Claire looked at Daniel, who was watching her intently. Then at Tony, who was nodding at her encouragingly, making say-yes gestures with his hands. "Okay," Claire heard herself say. "Yes, I'll be there." "Excellent. Come to the main entrance. I'll have your name at the desk, and dear, don't overthink it tonight. Just get some rest and play for me tomorrow the way you played tonight. That's all I need to hear." "Thank you," Claire whispered. "Thank my nephew, though I suspect his methods were less than gentlemanly. I'll see you tomorrow." The line went dead. Claire held the phone for a moment longer before handing it back to Daniel. Her hand was shaking. Daniel took the phone and slipped it back into his pocket. Then he did something Claire wasn't expecting. He pulled out his wallet and took out $500 bills, setting them on top of the piano. "I was rude to you tonight," he said quietly. "Actually, rude is too kind a word. I was arrogant and demanding. I treated you like you were beneath me, and that was wrong." Claire stared at the money. "You don't have to." "Yes, I do. I forced you to do something you weren't comfortable with. The fact that it turned out well doesn't excuse my behavior." He paused, looking uncomfortable. "I come from money. A lot of it. And somewhere along the way, I forgot that having money doesn't give me the right to treat people poorly. You reminded me of that tonight." "How did I remind you of anything? I just played the piano." "You played with your whole heart," Daniel said simply. "I haven't heard anyone play like that in years. Maybe ever." It reminded me of why I fell in love with music in the first place, before I started treating it like just another form of entertainment to consume. Before I started thinking I could buy whatever I wanted, including common decency. Claire didn't know what to say to that. She'd spent the whole evening thinking of this man as nothing but a rich jerk. And now he was standing here apologizing, looking genuinely ashamed of himself. "My aunt has been searching for months," Daniel continued. "She's heard at least 50 pianists. All of them were good. Some were even great, technically speaking. But none of them had what she was looking for. None of them could make her feel something." "You did that in 5 minutes." Tony spoke up from where he was standing. "Claire, you need to go to that audition. But my shift tomorrow." "Forget your shift. I'll cover for you. I'll tell Mr. Romano you had an emergency. This is more important than serving pasta and dealing with people who send back perfectly good steaks." Daniel winced at that, but didn't argue. Claire looked down at her hands. They were still trembling slightly, the adrenaline from playing still coursing through her system. An audition, tomorrow, with the Metropolitan Symphony Orchestra. It felt surreal, like a dream she might wake up from any second. "What if I'm not good enough?" she said quietly. "You are," Daniel said with certainty. "I've been going to concerts my entire life. I've heard the best pianists in the world. And what you just did, with no preparation, no practice, after 3 years away from music. Most of them couldn't do that on their best day." "He's right," Tony added. "I know I'm just a cook, but even I could tell what you did was special. The whole restaurant could feel it." Claire stood up from the piano bench. Her legs felt wobbly, like they might give out. She looked at the $500 sitting on the piano, then at Daniel. "I can't take that much," she said. "Yes, you can. Consider it an investment in your future, and an apology for my past behavior." He picked up his suit jacket from the back of his chair. "I should go. I've taken up enough of your time tonight." He started walking toward the door, then paused and turned back. "Claire, right? That's your name." She nodded. "Don't be nervous tomorrow. My aunt can seem intimidating, but she's fair. Just play for her the way you played tonight. Let her see what I saw, what everyone in this room saw." "What did you see?" Claire asked. Daniel smiled, and for the first time all evening it reached his eyes. Someone who belongs on a stage not carrying plates. Someone with a gift that's too big to keep hidden. Then he was gone, the door closing softly behind him. Claire stood there in the empty restaurant. Tony beside her, $500 on the piano, and an audition waiting for her in the morning. She felt like the ground had shifted beneath her feet, like her whole life had changed direction in the span of an hour. "You should go home," Tony said gently. "Get some sleep. Big day tomorrow." Claire nodded, but she couldn't seem to move. She kept staring at the piano, at her reflection in its polished black surface. For 3 years, she'd walked past pianos and felt nothing but pain. Tonight, for the first time, she'd felt something else. Hope. Claire didn't sleep much that night. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her mind racing. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the piano keys. Her fingers twitched, playing invisible notes against her blanket. At 4 in the morning, she gave up on sleep entirely and made coffee. She sat at her tiny kitchen table and tried to think about what pieces she should play. What would Helen want to hear? Should she stick with Chopin? Try something more modern? Her mind kept spinning in circles until she realized she was overthinking it, just like Helen had warned her not to. By 8 o'clock, Claire had changed clothes 3 times. She didn't own anything fancy. Most of her wardrobe was either her waitressing uniform or old jeans and t-shirts. She finally settled on a simple black dress she'd worn to her mother's funeral. It felt appropriate somehow, like her mom would be with her today. She arrived at Symphony Hall at 9:30, too early but too nervous to wait any longer. The building was massive, all marble columns and tall windows that let in the morning light. Claire had walked past it 100 times but never been inside. Now, standing in front of the entrance, she felt incredibly small. A security guard at the desk looked up as she approached. "Can I help you?" "I'm Claire Thompson. I have an audition at 10 with Helen Reeves." The guard checked his computer, then smiled at her. "Ah, yes, Ms. Thompson, Ms. Reeves is expecting you. Take the elevator to the 3rd floor. Someone will meet you there." Claire's hands were sweating as she rode the elevator up. The doors opened to reveal a long hallway with photos of famous musicians on the walls. She recognized some of them from her days at Juilliard. These were legends, people who dedicated their entire lives to music. What was she doing here? A young woman in a professional suit appeared from one of the offices. "Claire?" "Yes. I'm Rebecca, Ms. Reeves's assistant. She's ready for you. Right this way." They walked down the hallway, their footsteps echoing on the polished floor. Rebecca made small talk about the weather, but Claire barely heard her. Her heart was pounding so loud she could hear it in her ears. Rebecca opened a door and they stepped into the most beautiful room Claire had ever seen. It was a private concert hall, smaller than the main auditorium but still breathtaking. Rows of red velvet seats faced a stage where a grand piano sat under a spotlight. The acoustics in the room felt perfect, like the space itself was designed to make music sound magical. Helen Reeves stood near the stage, talking quietly with 2 other people. She was in her 60s, with silver hair pulled back in an elegant bun. She wore a burgundy suit and carried herself with the kind of confidence that came from decades of experience. When she saw Claire, her face broke into a warm smile. "You must be Claire. Thank you for coming on such short notice." "Thank you for the opportunity," Claire managed to say. "Let me introduce you to some colleagues. This is Peter Zhao, our conductor, and this is Michel Laurent, our first violin." Claire shook hands with both of them. Peter was younger than she expected, probably in his 40s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Michelle was tall and elegant, her handshake firm. "Daniel called me again this morning," Helen said, amusement in her voice. 3 times, actually. "He wanted to make sure I was taking this audition seriously. I assured him that I always take my work seriously, but he seemed quite insistent about you." Claire felt her cheeks warm. "He was very kind last night. After, I mean. At first he was insufferable," Helen offered with a knowing smile. "Yes, he told me. My nephew has many wonderful qualities, but humility has never been one of them. Though he did sound genuinely apologetic when we spoke. You must have made quite an impression. I think I was just having a bad night and everything came out when I played. Some of the best performances come from that place," Peter said gently, "when we stop thinking and just feel." Helen gestured toward the stage. "Whenever you're ready, the piano is yours. Play whatever you'd like. We just want to hear you." Claire walked up onto the stage, her legs feeling shaky. The piano was beautiful, even nicer than the one at Romano's. She sat down on the bench and adjusted it slightly. The 3 of them took seats in the front row, giving her space. For a long moment, Claire just sat there. Her hands hovered over the keys. This was it. This was the moment that could change everything. If she did well, she could have the life she'd given up on. If she failed, she'd go back to waitressing and wonder for the rest of her life what might have been. She thought about her mother, about all those nights in the hospital when she'd hum melodies to help her mom fall asleep. about how her mom used to say that music was the language of the soul, that it could say things words never could. Claire took a deep breath and began to play. She started with something gentle, a piece by Debussy that had always reminded her of rain. Her fingers moved across the keys slowly at first, finding their way back to muscle memory. The sound filled the hall rich and clear. The acoustics really were perfect here. Every note resonated exactly as it should. As she played, something strange happened. The nervousness started to fade. The fear of messing up, of not being good enough, it all began to drift away. There was just the music, flowing through her like water, like breath, like something that had always been there waiting to come out. She transitioned into Beethoven, one of his later sonatas. This was harder, more complex, requiring her hands to move in different patterns while maintaining the emotional core of the piece. But her hands remembered. Her body remembered. And more than that, her heart remembered why she'd fallen in love with this in the first place. Claire played for 20 minutes straight, moving from one piece to another without stopping. Classical work she'd learned years ago, contemporary pieces she'd studied at Juilliard, even a jazz arrangement she'd once performed at a student recital. Everything poured out of her in a rush like a dam had broken. When she finally played the last note, she sat there for a moment with her eyes closed, her chest heaving. Then she remembered where she was. She turned to look at Helen and the others, suddenly afraid of what she'd see on their faces. All three of them were leaning forward in their seats. Michelle had tears running down her cheeks. Peter was shaking his head slowly, a look of wonder on his face. And Helen, she was smiling the kind of smile that reached all the way to her eyes. "Well?" Helen said, her voice thick with emotion. Daniel wasn't exaggerating. Claire felt dizzy. She gripped the edge of the piano bench to steady herself. "Was that okay?" Michelle laughed, wiping her eyes. "Okay? Honey, that was extraordinary." Peter stood up and walked toward the stage. In 30 years of conducting, I've rarely heard anyone play with that kind of raw emotion while maintaining such technical precision. It's a rare combination. Helen stood as well, joining Peter at the edge of the stage. "Claire, I'm going to be direct with you because we don't have time to be coy. I'd like to offer you the position as our touring pianist. The European tour starts in 6 weeks, 12 cities over 3 months. The compensation is substantial, and all expenses are covered. What do you say?" Claire's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She tried again. "You're offering me the job?" "Just like that?" "Just like that," Helen confirmed. "Unless you need time to think about it?" "No, yes. Claire took a breath. "Yes, I want it. I absolutely want it." Helen's smile grew even wider. "Wonderful. Rebecca will handle all the paperwork and details. We'll need you to start rehearsals next week. I hope your current employer will understand." Claire thought about Romano's bistro, about carrying plates and dealing with difficult customers and coming home every night with aching feet and an empty feeling in her chest. Then she thought about standing on stages across Europe, playing music for audiences who came specifically to hear it. "I think he'll understand," she said. "There's one more thing," Helen said. "This tour, it's prestigious. You'll be performing with some of the best musicians in the world. The pressure will be intense. Are you ready for that?" Claire looked down at her hands, at the fingers that had remembered everything even when she'd tried to forget. She thought about the last 3 years, about loss and struggle and pushing down her dreams to survive. She thought about last night, about Daniel's initial cruelty leading somehow to this moment. "I'm ready," she said, and she meant it. Peter clapped his hands together. "Excellent. Welcome to the family, Claire. I have a feeling this is going to be a remarkable tour." Michelle came up onto the stage and hugged Claire, which surprised her. "I'm so glad you're joining us. The energy you bring, it's going to transform our performances." As they talked through the details, as Rebecca brought her contracts to sign and schedules to review, Claire felt like she was floating. This morning she'd been a waitress with debt and broken dreams. Now she was a professional pianist with a European tour ahead of her. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text message from an unknown number. "How did it go?" "Daniel," Claire smiled and typed back, "I got it." "Thank you for last night. For everything," the reply came quickly. "You earned it. I just got out of your way. Break a leg in Europe." She slipped her phone back into her pocket and looked around at the concert hall, at these people who were now her colleagues, at the piano that would be hers to play. Sometimes Claire thought the worst mom Ants lead to the best ones. Sometimes you have to break completely before you can become whole again. The next 6 weeks passed in a blur. Claire gave her notice at Romano's bistro, and Mr. Romano surprised her by throwing a small party for the staff. Tony made her favorite pasta dish, and even some of the regular customers came by to wish her well. They'd all heard the story by then, about the rude customer and the piano and the audition that changed everything. "You better come back and play for us sometime," Mr. Romano said, hugging her goodbye on her last day. "That piano's been lonely since you left." Claire promised she would. The rehearsals with the orchestra were intense. She practiced 8 hours a day, sometimes more, her fingers remembering skills she thought she'd lost forever. Helen pushed her hard but fairly, and the other musicians welcomed her like she'd always been part of the group. Michelle became a fast friend, often staying late to grab dinner with Claire after long practice sessions. "You're fitting in perfectly," Michelle told her one evening over Thai food. "Some newcomers take months to gel with the group. You jumped right in like you belong here." "I still can't believe this is real sometimes," Claire admitted. "I keep waiting to wake up back in my apartment getting ready for a shift at the restaurant." "It's real. And you earned it. Don't forget that." 2 weeks before the tour, Claire got an unexpected visitor at the rehearsal hall. She was taking a break, drinking water and reviewing sheet music when Rebecca approached her. "Someone's here to see you," Rebecca said. "Says his name is Daniel." Claire felt her stomach flip. She hadn't seen him since that night at the restaurant, though they'd exchanged a few text messages. She walked out to the lobby and found him standing there in another expensive suit, looking slightly uncomfortable. "Hi," he said. "Hi. This is a surprise. I hope it's okay that I stopped by. I wanted to talk to you before you left for Europe." He shifted his weight, and Claire realized he was nervous. She'd never seen him nervous before. "Can we sit?" They sat on a bench in the lobby. For a moment, Daniel didn't say anything. He just looked at his hands. "I've been thinking a lot about that night," he finally said. "About how I treated you. I've apologized, but I don't think I really explained why I was like that." "You don't have to. I want to." He looked at her directly. "I grew up with money. A lot of it. And somewhere along the way I started thinking that money meant I was better than other people, that I could demand things, treat people however I wanted because I was paying them. That night at the restaurant I was continuing a pattern I'd been living with for years." Claire stayed quiet, letting him talk. "Then you played," Daniel continued, "and something shifted. I heard real emotion, real passion, real talent. Something that had nothing to do with money or status or any of the things I'd built my identity around. You reminded me that the most valuable things in life can't be bought. They have to be earned through dedication and sacrifice and love for what you do." "That's a lot to get from one piano performance," Claire said softly. "Maybe. Or maybe I was ready to learn the lesson and needed someone to teach it to me." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. "This is for you." Claire took it carefully. Inside was a check. She looked at the amount and gasped. "It was for $50,000. I can't accept this," she said immediately, trying to hand it back. "It's not a gift," Daniel said. "Well, not exactly. I want to start a scholarship fund for musicians who have to give up their dreams because of financial hardship. People like you who have the talent but not the resources. I'd like you to be part of deciding who receives it. That check is the first scholarship payment. It's in your name, but I want you to use it however you need. Pay off debt, buy a new instrument, whatever would help you focus on your music." Claire stared at the check, her eyes filling with tears. $50,000? That was almost all of her remaining debt from her mother's medical bills. The weight she'd been carrying for 3 years could finally be lifted. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. "Because you changed my life," Daniel said simply. "I'd gotten so caught up in making money and collecting things that I'd forgotten what actually matters. After that night, I went home and couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how you'd sacrificed your dreams to take care of your mother, how you'd worked yourself to exhaustion just to pay bills, and I realized I could help people like you. I should help people like you. So that's what I'm going to do. I don't know what to say. Say you'll help me run the scholarship program. Your story, your experience, it matters. You can help identify musicians who really need support. Will you do that?" Claire nodded, unable to speak. She folded the check carefully and put it back in the envelope, holding it like it was the most precious thing in the world. "There's something else," Daniel said. He pulled out his phone and showed her a website. "I've been working on this with my aunt. It's a foundation for supporting artists in crisis. Musicians, painters, writers, anyone who's had to give up their art because life got in the way. We're launching it next month. I was hoping you'd be willing to share your story to inspire others. Claire looked at the website. It was beautiful, professional, with a mission statement about keeping art alive even in the hardest times. She saw there was already a donation button and information about applying for grants. You did all this in 6 weeks? When you find something worth doing, you make time for it. Daniel smiled. You taught me that too. You didn't have time to practice piano, but you found a way to play anyway. You kept that part of yourself alive even when everything else was falling apart. They sat together in silence for a moment. Through the doors, Claire could hear the orchestra warming up, the sound of instruments tuning, voices calling to each other. I should get back, she said. Of course. I just wanted to see you before you left. To thank you properly, they stood up. Claire surprised herself by hugging him. He seemed surprised too, but hugged her back. You're going to be amazing over there, he said. Europe has no idea what's coming. Claire laughed. I'm terrified. Good, that means you care. The day you stop being nervous is the day you should worry. She watched him leave, then looked down at the envelope in her hands. $50,000? A scholarship fund. A foundation. All because she'd been forced to play piano on the worst night of her life. The tour itself was everything Claire had dreamed of and more. They performed in concert halls across Europe. London, Paris, Vienna, Prague, Barcelona. Audiences gave standing ovations. Critics wrote glowing reviews. Claire's name started appearing in music magazines and online publications. But the moment that meant the most came in Vienna, 3 weeks into the tour. They were performing at the famous Musikverein, one of the most prestigious concert halls in the world. Claire was backstage preparing for the show when her phone buzzed. It was a text from Tony. Watching the live stream with the whole staff from Romano's, you're incredible. Your mom would be so proud. Claire had to sit down. She'd known the performance was being live streamed, but she hadn't thought about who might be watching. She imagined Tony and Luis and Mr. Romano gathered around a laptop in the restaurant kitchen, watching her play on a stage halfway across the world. She walked out onto that stage with tears in her eyes, but they were good tears. Happy tears. She sat at the piano and looked out at the packed concert hall, at hundreds of people who'd come to hear her play. Before she began, she thought about her mother, about those hospital nights and hummed lullabies, about dropping out of school and working double shifts, about thinking her dreams were dead and buried. She thought about Daniel walking into the restaurant on the worst night, about being forced to play when she didn't want to, about how sometimes the things we resist most are exactly what we need. Then she played. She played for her mother, for Tony and the crew at Romano's, for Daniel and his new foundation, for every person who'd ever had to give up their dreams because life got too hard, for everyone who wondered if it was too late to try again. The music filled the hall and Claire felt completely at peace. She'd lost so much over the past few years, but somehow through all that loss, she'd found her way back to who she was always meant to be. After the concert, backstage, Helen found her. That was your best performance yet. You know what made the difference? What? You stopped playing like you had something to prove. Tonight you played like you had something to share. That's when musicians become artists. Claire smiled. She pulled out her phone and saw messages flooding in. Friends from Juilliard who'd seen the live stream, former professors, even some customers from the restaurant. But the one that made her cry was from Daniel. You were right. Sometimes the worst moments do lead to the best ones. Thank you for teaching me that. The foundation received its first 100 applications today. We're going to change some lives, just like you changed mine. Claire looked around at the concert hall, at the life she was building, at the future stretching out before her full of possibility. She thought about the girl who'd been wiping down tables 6 weeks ago, exhausted and hopeless. That girl would never believe where she was now, but here she was anyway, playing piano on the greatest stages in the world, living the dream she thought she'd lost, proving that it's never too late, that one moment can change